My name's Ralph Lorenzo. This is Brian Lee, my partner.
Double trouble, boil and bubble.
We've taken an old granary here and converted it into a micro distillery. Everybody in town seems to like the idea that we've got a distillery, so it's been well received.
Yeah. You and your uncle.
We're at the Tuthilltown grist mill, which is the oldest water-powered flour mill in New York State. If you're making bread, you take the grain, you grind it up, you mix it with water and yeast, and you heat it up, and you make bread. And I was thinking, what else could we do along the same lines? And I realized we could make whiskey. It's the same thing, except when we heat it up, we're getting liquid out and not bread.
Located about 90 miles north of New York City, Tuthilltown Spirits is the first and only micro-distillery in New York to produce bourbon, rye, and vodka, since Prohibition put the kibosh on legal stills back in the 20s. Thanks to new rules on the books, Tuthilltown is now able to produce spirits like fine wine. Each batch different from the rest, making their liquors sought after in New York and Paris. It may be a sign that we've officially entered the golden age of spirits.
What are these, 80-pound bags? 100 pounds. 100 pounds.
We start with the grain. We've been buying as much local grain as we possibly can. We picked an heirloom corn that can date back to Native American times, so it hasn't had the flavor bred out of it. We take about 800 pounds of that corn and 2 bags of malted barley. It's the malt that contains the enzyme that allows the starch in the corn to be broken down to sugars that the yeast can turn into alcohol. Then we pump that cooked mash to tall fermenters, which allow the yeast to move around, and it stays there for 5-6 days. It sort of depends on how warm it is. This is the mash that's been fermenting since Monday. Corn, water, and yeast. And a couple of secret ingredients, of course.
And there's that dance, don't forget, traditional corn whiskey dance.
Don't shoot the fly going around now. After the yeast have completed their activity, the mash is pumped up. They're coming?
Yeah, it's coming good.
Pumped up through a long tube to the still. So that's the new batch coming up from downstairs. At that point, steam is put on the pot of the still.
A larger distillery making a lot of the same thing would have a column still that would be operating all the time, continuously. Ours is a pot still. We fill it, we take all the alcohol out, we rectify it, we start again with another batch of fermented material. So every batch is unique. The bell tells us that the temperature has reached 79 degrees centigrade. That's a temperature at which alcohol begins to leave the solution and come through the system.
The hydrometer is starting to float now, and in a second it'll come through the spout there, and we'll be collecting, well, at least the first pass of corn whiskeys. Here it comes, right about now. We'll take that alcohol that we collect and dilute it and run it again. At that point, we'll be making head, heart, and tail cuts, and the heart will be collected for the product. Really, the reason distillation works is because different components have different boiling points, and they come off the pot at different temperatures. So the lower temperature alcohols, which you really don't want to collect, come off first. It's still got a lot of head in it, which doesn't taste so good. Ralph has a different method. He uses his tongue like a dog.
Yeah, because who knows where my hands have been. So when you do the math, what it ends up is this is about 62.5% alcohol, which is just the right temperature to put it in the barrels. The barrels come to us dry, and when we fill them with water, they swell up and seal themselves up so they don't leak. And the little pieces of black you see coming out are charcoal. The inside of the barrel is heavily charred and helps purify the spirit by absorbing impurities, but it also caramelizes sugars that are in the wood, and that gives it a nice, mellow sweetness. So when we put it in the barrel, it will gain flavor from the oak and from the sugars and the tannins in the wood, and it will get a sort of golden color. Corn whiskey on the floor.
Quick, get the straws. Stop it now!
These are very small batches. I think our largest bottling so far has been 800 bottles. A major distillery is spilling more in one day than we put in bottles in a year.
Give that a test.
This is called the baby, right?
Our clients are mostly whiskey aficionados, people who are looking for something unique and different.
So how is that?
I could drink this for a couple hours and take a nap. That's great.
Pretty much everything we're doing is experimental. And in fact, all of our whiskeys are the first whiskeys made in New York since Prohibition. The community of people who are getting into micro distilling is very forthcoming for the most part.
We are where microbrewing was 20, 25 years ago. We are at that edge now.
It's just the two of us, this is it.
People are always looking for something new.
We're looking, as a lot of people are looking, for something interesting. And that's what we're making.